What's up, guys, and welcome back to the infamous project. Excited to share with you guys another little project. We'll call it a mini one here, sitting behind me, fresh back from paint, Brian's 1988 GT. Now, Brian reached out to me a number of months ago, had watched the channel and said, man, I would love to get my car repainted. Could you help me out? I'm in Houston. And he sent me a bunch of pictures, and the car actually looked pretty clean. So in this episode, I'm going to go over the details with you of what this car looked like before, and then we're going to get right back into it and get this thing reassembled so that way I can get it out in the sunlight and show off this beautiful fresh paint. Teamwork. Are you gonna clear that?
Well, I think she's gonna pull forward.
Oh, right. Yeah. Listen to that. Chop, chop, chop.
What motors you got in it?
I think it's a build 306. I can't remember. Looks good. Engine bay and all. This thing sounds good. So how do you feel about your paint job?
Took a lot longer than I wanted, but no, I'm happy about it. I'm happy the way everything came out. So
Yeah,
I'm actually really impressed with our paint line that we got.
Oh yeah, what are you using?
Valorum is backed by Axel Nobel.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever.
No, I haven't. Man, this looks good. Obviously, it's full of raindrops. It'll probably stop raining here in a minute. You went all out. You put skirts back on and everything.
Yeah, you may have to fit them. I also got
Man, he'll be over the moon. You know what? The chrome actually doesn't look as bad as I thought it would.
no. I got you a gift.
Oh, my caps. Wicked. All right, guys, like I mentioned in the intro there, Brian reached out to me via email, and I'll just post a couple pictures that he sent me. And this was actually a really good looking car as is. Well, black does tend to do that when you take pictures of it. And you know, with the chrome Cobras, it actually, like, it popped so well. I don't know if Brian's gonna be keeping these chrome Cobras. At first I was a little hesitant. Not a huge fan of chrome, especially on a gray or in a lighter color than black. So thinking this car might actually pull it off. We'll see. Once everything's cleaned up and the tires are all shined up, we'll see how it looks. But this car was rust free. I think it's been a Texas car for most of its life, and it was a really good foundation. The car didn't have much body work to deal with. It had more of dealing with previous paint job work to deal with. So the car was originally a color similar to this, and I forget what the name of this variation of the gray would have been back in the day for a Foxbody. You could probably check on the driver's store here. We can check the compliance label. It'll probably tell us the color code. And we need to take the tape off. So part of the unmasking fun of getting something fresh back from paint. There we go. Make sure we don't pull any off. And there we have it. So we have a 1D paint code. So I know it's a little dark in here. I've mentioned it before. I need to get some more lighting, but this should give you a pretty good little sneak peek of what the car looks like. So the new color is not the 1D original factory color. This is actually a new 2021 coyote color, if I believe. It is not the carbon that Brutal did. We literally just took all the chips and we had them laid out in the sun, and we were looking, you know, some had more red in them, some had more brown, and I knew what the customer was going for, so we just kind of like looked between them all and said, you know what, take that one. And here it is. So in terms of body work and everything else, not much really needed to be done other than getting all of that old previous material off. So when I actually cut out for the Cobra grill insert, what I found was the car had been painted gray once again, and then after that it was actually painted black. So there was quite a bit of body work that needed to be done on this driver's side here. There was some work, especially in the fender area here. This all got corrected. Everything came off. All the body kit was off. All the trim is off, and that's going to be part of the task of putting everything back together. Now, Brian did have a Cobra rear wing on the car with a GT bumper on the back, and he opted to go for a Cobra rear bumper, I think because he wanted to be able to show off his exhaust tips. And he wanted a normal GT wing. So his old Cobra wing is there. Actually, his old hatch is there, because what I did is I actually gave him the hatch and the wing off of my silver parts car, because it was all together and it was all in really good shape. So it was a pretty easy swap. So that's what we did there. And you're gonna notice nothing is bolted on all the way. It's just all kind of placed on the car for transport to get it back from paint here. So that was pretty much the rundown of what needed to be done. And we did actually get underneath the hood painted. You can see, got all the engine bay done here, rad support. So everything is looking real nice. Underside of the hood. Beautiful GT40 tubular intake. Brian actually has a whole story for that. I forget what the ridiculous amount was, but I want to say he got that for just a couple $100. And it wasn't just the intake, he got a whole bunch of stuff for just a couple $100. So the name of the game now is, well, we have all of his interior and trim and everything else that I've taken off the car. So now I need to go through all of this, and I got to get it prepped up, do my trim overhaul / detail and everything, get the lights reinstalled. You can see he actually had some Cobra style tail lights there, so we get all that put back on the car, his door panels and everything else. And he's actually got a whole bunch of new parts sitting on the shelf over there. So we got stuff like door lock actuators, brand new door handles, brand new lock cylinders, brand new window run channels, weather strips, all of those things that you ultimately want to replace when you freshly get your car painted. So we're going to be going through all of that. And let me go over here. Any guesses what I'm opening up in here, guys? Sure, you might be able to tell a little bit better now. Super rare thing to open up right here, and I'm really excited to see something this OG and original. So we have new old stock car light. So not LMR, Blems from Daniel Carpenter, not American Muscle, missing the Mustang logo, none of those weird things. These are genuine, new old stock, brand new quarter glass windows. Look at those amazing studs. I can't even move them. If I wanted to, they're in there. So good means no windows will be flying out on these guys. So what an awesome part to have for this car. So in case you're wondering, there are a pair in there. So these are going to get some butyl tape. These are going to get reinstalled, and I'm really excited to see this car come together, because just look at how pretty that looks. Well, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm actually going to start seeing what I can put back together here for now, get things started. And from there, I'm going to be loading up all the trim. I'm going to take the trim back to the house, just because, you know, there's a lot of gravel outside here. In case you guys haven't noticed, I don't want all the dust and everything else getting up in my paint. So the trim, I'll do it over at my place, and I'll transport it back. And but yeah, no, let's start getting this thing back together. Got the Cobra rear bumper cover off, sitting on some cardboard. Reason being, the painter, he had it set on here, but I had to get the metal retaining bracket on the back side of the cover here with the studs coming out, so that way we can get it fastened to the bottom side of the body properly. So this was sort of pulled through the body, so just wanted to make sure that the grommet was well secured and in place. And that's just when you spill fuel, will actually come out of this guy right here. So, you know, you just want to make sure that all your rubbers, couplers, all that stuff are put back in place. Otherwise, it's a possible area. Like a mouse could actually get in through that hole, believe it or not. And then you would end up with a rodent in your car, potentially. So anyways, we'll get the rear bumper cover mounted on properly, securely, finalized. There's actually a bracket that goes on the bottom side from Cervini, like this, that goes down underneath to help keep it from flexing, because this bumper does not have the Cobra bumper brackets on it. So we'll get those installed and get the tail lights bolted on properly. Already got our weather strip in the hatch here. Gotta find my LEDs, get some rubbers and everything else sorted here for the hatch stuff, get that all buttoned up. Then the back end of the car will be pretty much good to go. Here's a little trick. Door lock solenoids. A lot of people think you got to drill out these factory rivets in order to change them, when in reality, you don't, because the solenoid actually fits into these little brackets like this, or these rubber isolators. Now, it's not the easiest always to try and push those out of there, but you can in fact remove the solenoid out of this bracket, which is riveted on the back here. So if you actually leave this bracket in place, you don't have to touch this rivet. So sometimes people have already replaced these and there's a nut and bolt instead of the proper rivet in there, or whatever the case may be. But you saw me on the other side. This was actually removed because it was a nut and bolt on that side. Somebody had probably replaced it already. So I went ahead and riveted one in. So when you buy these aftermarket, you can buy just the solenoid, or you can buy them with these that come with the appropriate rivet that you need to get that installed. So on this side, we actually don't need to drill a rivet. We don't need to do any of that. We just need to massage these rubbers up into the factory bracket that's still sitting in there. All right, guys, so welcome to the scuffing party. Made it back to the house here, and things are a little bit cleaner, easier to work at. Sometimes for doing stuff like this trim, prep, and paint, like I said, there's just so much dust at the commercial shop, and I got too much stuff inside that I don't want to be spraying paint in there and getting overspray on fresh paint jobs. So here I am getting some sun, a little bit of a tailgate party. Thinking another 30 minutes or so, might have to crack a Miller Lite or so. But you can see here, I'm doing a cowl panel piece, and this is not the original. This is an aftermarket, came in this plastic, and you can see I am still scuffing it down, and I am still going to hit it with the trim paint. So actually got a fresh can of trim black right here. I do have the SEM primer that you can use before the trim paint. I like to do that, especially if you have any little imperfections or bodyworks or anything. Usually, you know, sometimes you end up with some paint chips on the windshield or hatch or rear glass trim pieces, and you know, it's always good if you got any, even just spot putty, you're still going to want to hit it with some primer first. So we will do that most likely in all these raw plastics here. So I cannot stress enough, these pieces that you buy aftermarket, they might look pretty good fresh out of the bag, but it doesn't mean that they're meant to stay that way. You still need to get a protective coating on there, especially if you're somewhere down where you got strong UV or heat, like here in Texas or Florida or anywhere down where it's hot, you get lots of sunlight. You know, these plastics are meant to be coated. The same thing with the door handles. These are brand new replacement door panels. So these are brand new replacement door handles. Those as well. Gonna scuff them down, prime, paint, and that way everything is gonna look uniform, everything is gonna match, everything will have a protective coating on it, and it'll be good to go. So just gonna keep sanding away here. I've already done most of all the windshield trim pieces. I've done the pieces that go along the tops of the doors. I do have to mask off the mirrors and scuff them down. And then we'll get to painting. So my plan is to get it all painted tonight, let it dry overnight, then we can bring it back to the shop tomorrow, get everything reinstalled on the car. There's a few pieces that I do need to buy that I'm just going to get a whole new lock cylinder set because I do want the lock cylinders to all be black. I could have painted the original locks, but he only had one key, and that one key was worn out big time. So I figure, you know what, I'll just get the lock set that's already black and we'll get that installed, new key, and he'll be on his way. The outdoor paint booth is ready. Got trim here on one parts car, and then the rest of the trim here on the other parts car. And then we got our mirrors hung and our little paint booths here. So yeah, call it redneck, call it country. I just call it functional and making what you have work, so you guys can absolutely do your trim at home. And it's pretty straightforward. Rattle cans make your life pretty easy too. So that's pretty much it. I've done lots of videos on this with different techniques, different products, but at the end of the day, what you just saw me do here in terms of pulling it off, cleaning it up, Scotch pad, purple Scotch pad, do whatever little bit of fixes, or if you might have messed up some of these clips on the window trim like Neo Mustangs talked about in his video on things that people do wrong when they're restoring their Foxbody. So make sure you get the right tools. I've shown how to do that with a pick tool when I was stripping down the Calypso car. And hopefully none of these butterflies, it's like all these butterflies decided to hatch in the past 24 hours. So hopefully none of them land on any of the trim. The good news is the stuff dries super fast. Like within 10 minutes you can touch it. And so we're gonna go quick here. A little bit of primer where I need primer, a couple coats of trim paint, and let it sit. That's it, get it inside. Beat that rain that we can see coming down there in the sky, and tomorrow we'll get this all bolted on. So let's go. So one thing to keep in mind, this is a high build filler primer. So if you have tiny, I mean tiny little imperfections, this is gonna fill it. Now, if you have a little bit bigger than a tiny imperfection, you might need multiple coats, or you might need it to have used some spot putty and not just try and use this as your spot putty. So if you do still have imperfections left, this is a point where you would take some sandpaper, a little block out those imperfections, and if you're anything more than 10 minutes, you're gonna have to wait until this stuff dries and scuff it down. Now, because we're still in pretty much the 10-minute window for flash time, 5 to 10 minutes between coats, 1 hour is your dry time. So if you're anything more than 10 minutes, then you gotta wait an hour and then scuff everything down before you can put paint on it. Because we're within 10 minutes, I'm going for it, and I'm just gonna stick this trim paint right on top. Probably gonna do 2 coats and call it a day, because if you do a lot of prep on the front side, you should be able to just spray that primer and not have to worry about sanding out imperfections. So just kind of take whichever lesser evil that you like. Either put your prep time in there, or you're gonna have to come back, do your primer, maybe see something that you missed, go back, fix it, wait for dry time, scuff it down, then paint. Here we go, almost a full can of trim black, maybe half a can of the primer. Didn't need too much of this, just cover up bare metal, cover up little tiny imperfections that the high build can fill, and that's it. Probably 2 coats and a splash, maybe 3 coats-ish, depending on how heavy you're applying it. That is all that we need. So I'm gonna let this sit here for 30 minutes. I got some grass to cut. I'll get it inside, and tomorrow we'll install this. All right, I almost forgot. I had this third brake light that came out of the GT wing, much like this GT wing here. And this was all, you know, faded out like this. And I just went ahead and hit this with the Scotch pad. And I got some of this Duplicolor 1K clear, which means, you know, UV resistant and all this. And I was knocking this clear before because it turned my engine bay yellow because I sprayed this on top of white. In this case, it shouldn't really matter. So we'll do a couple coats on here. You're gonna see how this looks brand new after. Yeah. Shine the car up a little bit here, make sure the clear is working. Just gonna keep that a nice, that's gonna be a tacky coat, so nothing too crazy. You can already see it's a little shinier, but I'm gonna give that a minute here to tack up. I'm gonna go ahead and hit it again. And as we get more clear on, the shinier it's gonna go. It's looking not too bad. We'll go in for coat number 2. This one we can put on a little heavier. We'll see how that looks once it sets up, and I might go in for a third and final. All right guys, things are looking pretty good. It's kind of attracting these little gnats, which is a pain, so I'm just going to try and get a third and final coat on here, and I'm going to move it inside the shop. There we go. Let's get this inside. Looks nice and shiny now. Perfect. So you can actually do this with your tail lights. It'll bring them right up looking like new again as well. So there's a nice little hack for you. It's the next day, got a little bit of rain falling down here. Got all of the painted trim in the back of the truck. And while I'm waiting for the rain just to finish doing what it's doing here, I'm gonna go ahead and get this front bumper cover bolted on, get it lined up with the fenders properly. So it was just on, and it was a little bit of a battle. So the painter went out of his way. I just had one nut holding the front bumper cover on loosely when I brought the car to him. And that was just to make sure that with the bumper cover being off, you know, he could get paint in all of the areas that he needed to get paint. So he had this nice new fresh hardware. The problem is it was the wrong thread pitch, and there was a couple that were stuck on there. He said he only put them on hand tight, but man, they were spinning the studs, so I kind of had to get a really slim pair of needle nose vice grips, and I got it like right between in here and managed to get those nuts off, thankfully. So those are off, and make sure that the fender extensions and everything else are on and nice and straight. So just got a little bit of dust there, no big deal. So yeah, so now just going to get all of the proper hardware bolted on here, make sure that all of our lines are good around these edges and contours, and like I said, front fender extensions, and should be good to go in the front to position to start putting the front headlights back in. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little ridge there. I don't know if that's part cut out from the mold from the GT skirt, or maybe a little bit of body filler that got in there at one point. Anyways, I'm just going to trim that out with a razor blade. You can see I've masked up the top here so I don't touch or affect the paint. So I gotta put the camera down, but I'll get this. Here's a little bit of spot putty that was on there. You see how it's built up in there like that? So the problem is, even when I get this against here, you're gonna see that ridge hiding in there. So I wanna make sure I get that trimmed out so you don't see it. So now when I line the bumper up, you can see you don't see that anymore. So little details, guys, little details. right guys, day 3, trying to put this 88 GT back together, and it is door handle time. So one thing that I want to mention to you guys is that when you're putting on new door handles, whether you get the plastic ones, the metal ones, any reproduction ones, they can all be a little bit different. And I've had handles that actually stick out a little too far from the actual door body. I don't know why. I'm not even sure which brand of handle it is, so I'm sorry for that. However, the ones that I have now that are going in, they are just plastic reproduction ones. So nothing fancy. And one thing that I want to stress is that, you know, it is a special rivet. It's a larger size rivet. It should come with the kit. But some people actually will end up using a nut and bolt through here, which is fine. I've done it in the past as well, but today, because the handles came with the rivets, we're going to use the rivets. But one thing that I just want to point out is that sometimes, and I don't know if the camera will pick this up, for the people out there that don't know how to open their Foxbody door handles properly, and it usually happens on the passenger side, people do a lot of this, and what happens is the metal will actually stretch out away from the door. So what'll happen is when you go to mount your new handle, it won't sit flush. You can actually see a little bit of it here, a little bit of stress probably from that. And it could be old age, a little bit of metal fatigue. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna put, you know, shop cloth there, and I'm just going to strike it a little bit with a hammer and try and get that flush. Because if we get this nice and flush, the handle's gonna sit flush, and ultimately it's not gonna stick away a little bit more from one side versus the other. So just a nice little tip, and make sure you got an extra set of hands helping you do the riveting. So one guy can hold the handle up and away from the rivet gun, so that way, you know, you don't end up scratching your paint. So when you need extra muscles, you know, you cut your sleeves off. Just be gentle. Sir. Be careful right before it snaps. You got to make sure that you don't end up sliding, scratching your paint. If you guys are amateurs, put tape down.
That'd be a bad day.
Yeah. Boom. As you can see here, nice and recessed in, lots of clearance. Most importantly, functionality. Still need to get the weather strips in here and do new door pins up there, because this door does have, probably can't see that. There we go. So we'll do new door pins in this to make sure we don't get the sag and wear on the striker. In fact, we need new bushings on the striker here. So I have to add that to the list. All right, guys, it's time to put in the new old stock quarter windows. So before we get started, you want to remove all of the old butyl tape, and hopefully for anybody out there watching, you're not one of those people that somebody has replaced or changed and done this with windshield urethane. I know some of you say that I like my urethane, and I do for certain applications. However, installing your quarter glass with it is not one of those things. I've had to cut out quarter windows that have been urethaned in before, and it's not fun. Actually, you guys would have seen that on the Dutch number 5 teardown video. I thought for sure we were gonna break the windows, but we actually managed to get them out. So as you can see, Even the old butyl is fairly easy to pull off. So I'll just go around, finish doing this, we'll clean up the surface, lay our new tape down, and get the new window installed. And we're pretty much good to put on the new butyl tape. So I just got this from Napa. Whole roll of it is more than enough to do both sides. And if you're wondering, this is 5/16 in terms of thickness. It's round. Don't just buy flat butyl tape. This is designed for windows. RVs use this quite often. So glass, there's probably lots of other applications it can be used for, but this is exactly what you're gonna want in terms of what the factory would have done. Now, one thing that I do highly recommend doing is just take some little strips like this, roll them out. It's almost like playing with Play-Doh, and put it around all of the mounting points. And even though the new windows come with like these little foamy pads, I don't know if they could be 100% trusted in terms of sealing everything up. So just do yourself a favor. For a little bit extra time it takes. That way you can assure yourself that you won't run into water getting in your car. These ones are obviously all sealed because it's on the outside here, so they're not a big deal. And that should do it. So I'm gonna go get the glass now, we'll get that set in. So in case you guys are wondering, I actually found the invoice from NPD, and the invoice was, do we have a date here? 2013, so we're talking December of 2013, 9 years ago, pretty much. $240 per window, which in today's market is a steal. You will notice there is a little piece of 3M stick right here, which actually doesn't work very well, seems to have lifted right off. So what I'll do is actually get a different piece of 3M. So this is optional, but I do recommend doing it. Just put a little piece of 3M stick, 2A tape. This actually came with the Cervini rear bumper cover, this little roll. And that's pretty much it. Just make sure, take a look. Here's the little foam pads I was talking about that I guess can do a seal, but by putting that little bit of goo down, I think it's going to do a better job. In fact, I was wondering about this. So yeah, so this hole right here is actually not used. So plug it up and you won't have to worry about water getting in. All right. Push back here, we'll get our 2A tape in order. All right, so naturally the butyl tape is going to make it so, you know, there's a little bit of resistance on the window. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look from the back side. I've talked about this on the Cali Coupe when I went over the whole LMR window thing. Look on the back side, look for daylight coming through, and make sure that your seal is good all the way around. Which I've done enough of these. I know where the seal needs to be to make sure that everything is good. you've got a good quality, or it's an original glass, or new old stock, or whatever it might be, the idea is to put the nuts on and just rotate around all of the nuts in a circular pattern. You know, go kind of pretend like you're tightening up a lug nut, and then just kind of keep going around and around. And from there, you're going to draw the glass in against the body of the car. You will create the seal that you need to make sure you keep the moisture out. And well, we're going to have awesome looking quarter windows in this car. There we have it. Freshly installed quarter window, looking great. Now I can put on this trim piece here. I can't stress enough how important it is to try and have these pieces in OEM or original form. When you buy these aftermarket, honestly, the passenger side, for whatever reason, and the driver's side, they always want to end up living on the inside edge of this guy here. Now I managed to bend this channel open quite a bit on a set of aftermarket ones that I did on the twin turbo car, and you know, generally made it fit okay, but nothing beats factory. So with these guys, what you want to do, you can see this little ear sticking out from the quarter glass. You want to get it inside the little channel here. So we're going to start from the back, slide that in, get it butt up against there, and then work our way forward. Pushing up. And we'll get our little set screw in here. All right, guys, so there you have it. Pretty much wrapping up the third day. I was really hoping to get the headlights in because I was really digging this whole staggered Foxbody scene that I got going on in the shop here. But the inner and corners, even though these are the cool old school clear corners, you can see how yellowed they are. And I just can't bring myself to putting them in. I tried to wet sand down the one a little bit. I think the lenses themselves might be stained. The actual headlights that came out of the car, they're crystal white, so they look great. So I just can't bring myself to put yellowed headlights in this thing. So even though the headlights aren't in, the car is coming along just nicely. You know, taking my time, trying to make sure, you know, I don't make any mistakes, putting stuff back where it belongs. I actually ended up loosening off the driver's side fender just a little bit and getting it to push in, because this car did have something that happened in that front left corner at some stage. So there was one support bracket that goes from sort of your rad support area down to the inside of the front fender. So that wasn't even hooked up when the car got dropped off. So just little things like that, making sure that the right stuff is in the right places and making sure that the fitment and everything else is good. And I'm really happy with the way that this trim is coming out. It's looking great. Can't wait for the door locks, and most importantly, to get door moldings back on the car. Everybody knows that I hate not having door moldings, especially on a GT. It just looks horrible. But we did get the third brake light in. So you can see that's nice and shiny looking after the couple coats of clear coats. That brought that up just like new. Got a new Ford emblem on the hatch here. So the back of the car is looking great. We really just need the lock cylinder, and it's going to finish everything off awesome back here. So I'm really excited to see this thing come together. I'm probably not going to bore you guys with the details of putting all the interior back in. That's pretty straightforward. I think I've done more than enough interior videos in the past little while. But yeah, those door lock actuators have been changed. Got brand new door handles on there. Lock cylinders are pretty straightforward just with the way that they go on. So hopefully the next little segment of this video is pretty much finishing things up and the final reveal. So stay tuned. All right, well, I'll do one little quick last segment here while I'm getting the Vominos. One thing that I want to share with you guys, kind of the last thing, button up item while I'm, doing the weather strip. I'm doing a little bit of kill mat on the doors, so that way he gets a little bit of better sound out of his speakers, because why wouldn't you do it while everything is apart? So I'm just doing it. He didn't ask me to do it. I'm going to do it anyways. So I'll put a little clips in of, me doing the kill mat and all that other stuff. But these NPD lock cylinders, what I love about them is that not only are they already black, but they come with this little rubber gasket that you kind of pass through here like this. And what that does is it gives such a nice flush look once you got it installed on the car. Just kind of gives, I don't know, like a nice finished look instead of it sort of being metal on metal where it can rub against your paint. It's something that will put a little bit of a buffer in case you ever need to take it off, or I don't know. It's just a nice little finishing touch.